The server room smells like ozone and impending doom. That's the smell of my life for the past 10 years. While the rest of the company is upstairs playing grab-ass with marketing budgets and ordering organic kale salads for lunch, I'm down here in the sub-basement, making sure the digital plumbing doesn't burst and spray radioactive sewage all over our Department of Defense contracts. I'm Margaret. I'm the systems compliance lead. It sounds fancy, but really, I'm a glorified janitor for classified data. I clean up the messes before the federal government notices them. I'm the only reason this company hasn't been audited into a smoking crater in the ground. It was a Tuesday when the axe fell. Tuesday is a garbage day for bad news. It ruins the whole rhythm of the week. I was deep in a level 3 audit log, tracking a packet loss that looked suspicious when my phone buzzed. It was HR. Bring your badge, the text said. Classic. Subtle as a brick through a windshield. I walked into the glass-walled conference room on the 12th floor. The air conditioning was set to meet locker, probably to preserve the new CFO's ego. His name was Greg. Greg looked like he was assembled in a factory that makes generic villains for Hallmark movies, too much teeth, a suit that cost more than my car, and eyes that were dead inside. He'd been here 3 weeks. He didn't know a server from a toaster oven. Margaret, Greg said, leaning back in his ergonomic chair like he was about to bestow wisdom upon a peasant. We've been reviewing the operational expenditures. Specifically, your department. I am the department, Greg, I said, not sitting down. My knees were killing me from crawling under the racks earlier. Exactly, he smiled. It was a shark smile. And you're very premium. We found a solution that's more aligned with our new fiscal agility strategy. Fiscal agility, I repeated. The phrase tasted like expired milk. You mean you found someone cheaper? Significantly, he said, sliding a folder across the mahogany table. We've contracted an external team, offshore, very dynamic. They start tomorrow. We'll need your access keys and your badge by end of day. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I looked for a sign of intelligence, a flicker of understanding that we handle data that requires TS/PSI clearance protocols. I saw nothing but dollar signs and the reflection of his own veneers. Greg, I said, my voice dangerously calm, does this dynamic new team have federal clearance? Do they know the handshake protocols for the DoD uplinks? Because if they don't, you're not just breaking a contract. You're committing a felony. He laughed. He actually chuckled like I was a toddler explaining quantum physics. You tech people always make it sound so dramatic. It's just data, Margaret. It's ones and zeros. Don't worry about the big picture. That's my job. By the way, if you're enjoying watching a corporate suit casually destroy his own life, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button and upvote. It keeps the caffeine flowing and the stories coming. Seriously, do it now because it's about to get ugly. I stood there for a solid 10 seconds. The rage was a hot stone in my gut. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the heavy oak chair through the glass wall. I wanted to explain that the ones and zeros he was talking about were logistics coordinates for military hardware. But then, a cold, dark feeling washed over me. It was the feeling of a calm sea right before a tsunami. Okay, I said. Greg blinked. He was expecting a fight. He was expecting begging. Okay, you're the boss, Greg. Fiscal agility, I get it. I unclipped my badge. I placed it on the table. And I reached into my pocket and pulled out the physical RSA token, the master key for the admin console. I set it down next to the badge with a soft click. I assume this new team is ready to take over the handshake at midnight? I asked. They're fully briefed. Greg waved a hand dismissively. You can pack your personal items. I walked out. I didn't storm. I didn't slam the door. I walked to my desk, picked up my framed photo of my dog, my lucky stapler, and my cactus. I left the documentation. I left the sticky notes explaining the quirks of the firewall. I left the manual I wrote from scratch over 6 years. But here's the thing about fully briefed outsourced teams hired by guys like Greg. They work off scripts. They don't know the ghost in the machine. They don't know that the server rack in corner 3 overheats if you run the backup at 2 a.m., or that the federal uplink requires a manual heartbeat signal every 6 hours or it locks down the entire building. I took the elevator down to the parking lot. The sun was shining, which felt insulting. I threw my box in the passenger seat of my beat-up sedan. I lit a cigarette, my first in 3 years, and inhaled until my lungs burned. Fiscal agility, I muttered to the dashboard. I drove home. I didn't cry. I stopped at the liquor store and bought a bottle of bourbon, the expensive stuff, because I wasn't unemployed. I was retired. And tomorrow, Greg was going to find out exactly what he'd bought with his budget cuts. I knew one thing for certain. The systems were set to auto-cycle at midnight. If the handshake didn't happen, and it wouldn't because the new guys wouldn't have the encryption keys I just left on the table, the system would interpret it as a hostile intrusion. I poured a glass of bourbon, sat on my porch, and waited for the world to burn. My apartment is quiet. It's the kind of quiet you only get when you live alone and your entire career has just been flushed down the toilet by a guy whose tie cost more than your rent. I sat on my couch, the leather cracked and cool against my legs, staring at the TV. I wasn't watching it. It was just noise, a distraction from the clock ticking on the wall. It was 11:45 p.m. In the IT world, specifically the compliance sector, You develop a sixth sense. It's like a phantom limb. Even though I was 10 miles away, stripped of my badge and my access, I could feel the server room humming. I knew the cooling fans were ramping up for the nightly data dump. I knew the scripts were queuing. And I knew that in exactly 50 minutes, a team of underpaid, underqualified contractors in a time zone 12 hours ahead of us was going to try to log in. I took another sip of bourbon. It burned less this time. My phone was sitting on the coffee table. It was my personal phone, but because I had built the entire notification architecture from scratch, my number was hard-coded into the catastrophic failure alert tree. I'd meant to remove it, I really had. But in the chaos of packing my cactus and my dignity, I must have forgot. Oops. At 12:01 a.m., the phone lit up. The screen glowed harsh blue in the dim living room. I didn't pick it up immediately, I just looked at it. A single notification. System alert, unrecognized IP address attempting admin access. I smiled. A dry, humorless smile. There you are, I whispered. Greg's dynamic team was trying to get in. And because they were cheap, they weren't using the secure VPN tunnel I had spent 4 months configuring to DoD standards. They were coming in through the front door, probably using a standard remote desktop protocol. That's like trying to break into Fort Knox with a plastic spoon. The phone buzzed again and again. System alert, incorrect credentials. Attempt 2, system alert, incorrect credentials. Attempt 3, here's the kicker. The system they were trying to access wasn't the payroll database. It wasn't the marketing drive. It was the secure repository for Project Arrows, a subcontract involving logistics data for troop movements. You don't just log into Project Arrows. You need a physical token, a biometric scan, and a specific IP clearance. Greg had the token. It was sitting on the conference table where I left it, but Greg was probably asleep in his McMansion, dreaming of his quarterly bonus. The contractors didn't have the token. They just had a username and a password provided by IT support. The phone buzzed a fourth time. System alert, unauthorized user detected in restricted zone. Protocol 7 initiated. My stomach dropped. Protocol 7. I wrote Protocol 7. It's the digital equivalent of locking the doors, barring the windows, and releasing the hounds. Protocol 7 doesn't just block access. It flags the attempt as a hostile act. It assumes the user is a foreign agent or a hacker. It immediately snapshots the IP address, MAC address, and this is the beautiful part, it starts a silent trace. If I was a good employee, this is the moment I would call Greg. I would call the emergency line. I would scream, unplug the router, stop them. But I wasn't an employee. I was a liability. I was too expensive. I watched the phone vibrate across the table, dancing towards the edge. The contractors were persistent. I could practically see them, sitting in a call center halfway across the world, sweating, staring at a screen that just kept saying access denied. They were probably messaging their manager, who was messaging Greg's deputy, asking why the credentials weren't working. They would try to bypass it. They always do. They think it's a glitch. They think if they just force the command line, it'll open up. The phone buzzed again. A new message this time. Critical, firewall breach attempted on port 8080. Oh, you idiots, I said aloud, shaking my head. Port 8080. They were trying to route through the web traffic. By doing that, they had just crossed the line from incompetent to active threat. The system was designed to react to this specific behavior. It wasn't just logging errors anymore. It was building a case file. Every keystroke they made was being recorded and packaged into a tidy little zip file labeled evidence. I poured another drink. The amber liquid swirled in the glass. I pictured the server room. The lights on the racks would be flashing from green to amber now. The fans would be screaming as the encryption algorithms kicked into overdrive to protect the core data. Someone at the office, probably the night janitor or a sleepy security guard, might hear the fans revving up like a jet engine. But they wouldn't know what it meant. My phone finally stopped buzzing for a moment. Silence. Then, a different tone. A sharp, piercing ping. I picked it up. Alert, Federal Compliance Watchdog triggered. Level 1. That was it. The first domino had fallen. The system had detected the breach attempt on a classified sector, and as per the Patriot Act compliance software I installed, it had sent a hello ping to the external monitoring station. The monitoring station isn't in our building. It's in a nondescript office park in Virginia. The contractors had just knocked on the door of the Department of Defense and run away. I sat back, the leather creaking. My heart was pounding, a heavy thudding in my chest. This was bad. This was career-endingly bad for the company. If I intervened now, I could maybe stop it before it went to level 2. I could log in through my backdoor, which still worked because I'm not an idiot, and kill the connection. I could save Greg's ass. I looked at the empty spot on the wall where my diploma used to hang. I remembered the smirk on Greg's face. Fiscal agility. I put the phone face down. Not my problem, I said. But the night was young, and the new team was just getting started. I couldn't stay in the apartment. The silence was too loud, and the urge to fix things was an itch under my skin I couldn't scratch. So at 1:30 a.m., I found myself at the Rusted Spoon, a 24-hour diner that smelled of stale grease and despair. It was perfect. I ordered black coffee and a slice of pie that looked like it had been sitting in the display case since the Reagan administration. I opened my laptop. Now, before you judge me, understand this. Greg revoked my network admin credentials. He took my RSA token. He locked me out of the servers. But Greg, in his infinite wisdom, forgot that the building's physical security system, the cameras, the badge readers, runs on a completely separate legacy network. Network that I, coincidentally, also maintain because the facilities manager, Dave, couldn't figure out how to reset his password. I still had the master login for the cameras. I typed in the IP address, bypassed the certificate warning, classic Dave, never updated the SSL, and there it was. A grid of 16 grainy black and white feeds. The office was dark. Empty cubicles stretched out like a graveyard of ambition. The cleaning crew had already left, but wait. Camera 4, the server room. There was movement, not a person, but lights. The status LEDs on the main mainframe were strobing like a disco in a seizure. Red, amber, red, red, and then on camera 2, the main bullpen, I saw a monitor flicker on. It was Greg's deputy's computer. The screensaver vanished, replaced by a remote desktop window. The mouse cursor moved jerkily across the screen. The dynamic team was trying to troubleshoot. Since they couldn't get into the server directly, they were remote controlling a desktop PC inside the network, hoping to pivot from there. It was painful to watch. It was like watching a monkey try to perform open-heart surgery with a hammer. I zoomed in on the feed. The resolution was trash, but I could make out the windows opening and closing. Command prompt, control panel, network settings. They were changing the DNS settings. Oh God, I whispered into my coffee cup. The waitress, a woman named Barb who looked like she'd fought a bear and won, topped off my mug without asking. Trouble with the boyfriend? She rasped. Something like that, I said. He's an idiot. They all are, honey. Eat your pie. I watched the screen on my laptop. Changing the DNS settings inside a secure enclave is a massive red flag. It tells the automated security system that the internal network is being hijacked. Suddenly, on the camera feed, the lights in the server room stopped flashing. They went solid red, all of them. Lockdown initiated. I didn't need a notification to know what happened. The system had had enough. It had isolated the core. It had severed the connection to the internet to protect the data. The mouse cursor on the remote desktop in the bullpen froze. The connection was dead. The contractors had just locked themselves out. I laughed, a short, sharp bark of laughter that made a trucker 2 booths over look up from his hash browns. But then I saw something else. Camera 1, the lobby. A security guard, old Mr. Henderson, was looking at his panel. He picked up the phone. He looked confused. He was dialing a number. He wasn't dialing the police. He was dialing the emergency contact listed on the wall. My phone rang. I stared at it. It was the building front desk. Mr. Henderson was calling me because my name was still on the in case of fire or cyber apocalypse sheet pinned next to the fire alarm. I let it ring. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I could imagine Mr. Henderson's voicemail. Miss Margaret? The lights are doing that blinking thing again, and the air conditioning just shut off in the server room. It's getting real quiet in here. Just thought you should know. The AC shutting off. That was a side effect of the lockdown. To prevent fire spread, the AC dampers close. But without AC, that server room was going to turn into an oven in about 45 minutes. And while the data was encrypted, the hardware was about to cook itself. I took a bite of the pie. It tasted like cardboard and cherries. I switched tabs on my laptop to my email, my personal email. I drafted a message to Greg. Subject, FYI body, Greg. It was like you might be having some teething issues with the new team. Remember, fiscal agility comes with risks. Best of luck. I hovered over the send button. Then I deleted it. No, he needed to learn. He needed to feel the heat. I watched the temperature gauge on the server room camera overlay. It was creeping up. 72 degrees, 75 degrees, 78 degrees. At 85 degrees, the thermal alarms would trigger. Those alarms don't just go to Mr. Henderson. They go to the fire department. And when the fire department shows up to a facility holding classified DoD data, they are required to notify the local federal liaison. I checked my watch. 2:15 a.m. By sunrise, there wouldn't just be IT problems. There would be men with badges and guns. Barb, I called out. Can I get another slice? And maybe some extra whipped cream. I'm celebrating. Celebrating what? She asked, sliding a fresh plate over. Unemployment, I said. It's surprisingly productive. You know how in horror movies, the music swells right before the monster jumps out? In systems administration, there is no music. There is only the silence of your inbox, followed by the cacophony of disaster. I stayed at the diner until 4:00 a.m. The server room temperature was holding at a toasty 88 degrees. Hot enough to make the fans scream for mercy, but not quite hot enough to melt the solder on the motherboards. Yet, my phone, which I had silenced, was vibrating against the Formica table like a trapped moth. I unlocked it. The notifications were stacking up like Tetris blocks. Critical, thermal threshold exceeded critical. Heartbeat signal lost node A critical. Heartbeat signal lost node B, and then the big one. The one that makes your blood run cold even when you expect it. Federal compliance alert. Unauthorized access escalation level red. Level red. Let me explain what level red means in the world of government contracting. Level green is all good. Level yellow is someone forgot to change their password. Level orange is we have a potential breach, investigate immediately. Level red means the chain of custody has been broken, the data is compromised. We are assuming the facility has been overrun. Level red doesn't send an email to the IT help desk. Level red sends an automated, high-priority signal to the DSA, Defense Information Systems Agency Oversight Office. It's an electronic flare shot directly into the sky. I sipped my lukewarm coffee. I pictured the scene at the DSA watch floor. A board lieutenant probably saw the red light blink on his dashboard. He probably tapped his screen, frowned, and checked the contract number. Contractor, Aerotech Solutions, status, compromised. He would pick up a red phone. Not literally a red phone, that's a movie trope, but a secure line. He would call the point of contact for the contract. That point of contact was Greg. I closed my eyes and let the satisfaction wash over me. It was 4:15 a.m. Greg's phone was about to ring, and it wasn't going to be a telemarketer. Imagine Greg fumbling for his phone on his bedside table, his silk pajamas rustling. He'd answer, groggy, expecting a wrong number. This is Colonel Redacted from Defense Oversight. We have a level red signal originating from your server farm. Confirm status immediately. Greg wouldn't know what a level red was. He'd probably think it was a prank. He'd say something stupid like, "Who is this? Call me during business hours," or worse, he'd try to bluff. "Oh yes, Colonel. Just a minor glitch. Fiscal agility, you know?" The Colonel would not care about fiscal agility. Back on my laptop, the camera feed showed a new development. The lights in the office lobby jerked on. Mr. Henderson was standing at the front desk, looking terrified. He was talking to someone on the lobby phone. He was nodding vigorously. He hung up and started running, actually running, which for Mr. Henderson was a shuffling jog towards the elevators. He was going to the server room. Someone had told him to physically pull the plug. "Don't do it, Henderson," I whispered. "If you cut power to a server rack during a level red lockdown without following the shutdown sequence, you corrupt the audit logs. And corrupting the audit logs during an active investigation is technically destruction of evidence." I saw him on camera bursting into the server room. He looked hit by a wall of heat. He waved his hand in front of his face. He looked at the screaming machines. He looked at the wall of blinking red lights. He reached for the main breaker panel. "No, no, no," I hissed. He hesitated. He looked at the panel, then at the machines. He pulled his hand back. He grabbed his radio instead. Smart man. He was calling for backup, or maybe he just realized he didn't get paid enough to fry himself. My phone buzzed again. A text from a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized the prefix. It was a DC area code. "Margaret. This is Agent Miller, DoD Cyber Division. We show a level red at your facility. Your number is listed as the secondary technical lead. Status?" I stared at the text. They were reaching out to me. The system still had me listed. I had a choice. I could text back. I could say I was fired yesterday. Not my circus, not my monkeys, but that would tip my hand. That would make me look bitter. I ignored the text. Let them find out the hard way. Let them realize that the only person who knew the difference between a cyber attack and a budget cut was currently eating cherry pie in a diner 5 miles away. The sun was starting to crack the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and bloody oranges. The world was waking up, and Greg was about to have the worst morning of his life. I finally went home around 6 a.m. I needed a shower to wash off the diner smell and the residue of moral ambiguity. I stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, and checked my phone. 7 missed calls, 5 voicemails, all from Greg. I sat on the edge of my bed and played them on speaker like a podcast of a man's soul leaving his body. Voicemail 1, 4:48 a.m. "Margaret, it's Greg. Listen, we're getting some weird automated calls. Probably a glitch in that old system you built. I need the passcode to shut off the alarm. The noise is annoying the new team. Call me back." Tone, annoyed, condescending. He still thought he was in charge. He blamed my system. Classic narcissist. He thought the alarms were the problem, not the symptom. Voicemail 2, 5:15 a.m. "Margaret, Greg again. The remote team can't log in. They're saying the server is rejecting their IP. Did you change something before you left? If you sabotage the network, I will have legal on you so fast your head will spin. Pick up the phone." Tone, aggressive, accusatory. He was trying to find a scapegoat. He was scared, but he was covering it with anger. Voicemail 3, 5:42 a.m. "Margaret, look. I have a colonel on the other line. He's asking about chain of custody. I don't know where the physical logs are. You said you left documentation? It's not on your desk. Just call me. We can work this out. Maybe contract you for a few hours of consulting." My rate, tone, bargaining. The cracks were showing, my rate, as if he was doing me a favor. He was realizing that he couldn't bluff a colonel. Voicemail 4, 6:10 a.m. "Margaret, please, the AC is off. The servers are overheating. Henderson says he can't reset it without a code. The fire department is here. They're threatening to hose down the room if the temp doesn't drop. I don't know the code. Why is there a code for the AC? Call me." Tone, panic, pure unadulterated panic. The fire department, that was a nice touch. I hadn't anticipated them arriving this early, but the thermal sensors must have tripped the building-wide safety. Voicemail 6:30 a.m. They're locking the doors, Margaret. Some guys in suits just walked in. They're not police. They're federal. They're asking for the security officer. That's you, or it was you. I told them you were unavailable. They said to find you, please. I need you to come in. I'll pay whatever. Just make it stop. Tone defeat. I listened to the last one twice. Just make it stop. I stood up and walked to my closet. I picked out my outfit carefully, not a suit. I wasn't an employee. I chose dark jeans, boots, and a black blazer. Sharp, professional, but distinct. I wanted to look like a consultant. I wanted to look like the expert they couldn't afford. I made a fresh pot of coffee. I didn't call him back. Why? Because you never interrupt an enemy when he is making a mistake. And Greg was currently making the mistake of trying to explain a level red breach to federal agents without his compliance officer. Every word he said to them was digging his grave deeper. Every excuse about fiscal agility was going to be noted in a sworn affidavit. I sat by the window and watched the street. It was a beautiful morning. Birds were singing, the trash truck was rumbling down the alley, and 3 miles away my former office was being turned into a crime scene. My phone rang again. It wasn't Greg. It was a private number. I knew who it was. It wasn't Agent Miller this time. It was the heavy artillery. I let it ring until the very last second. Then I picked up. This is Margaret. Ma'am, this is General Vance, Department of Defense, Cyber Command. Do not hang up. His voice sounded like gravel in a cement mixer. It commanded attention. I'm listening, General. We have a situation at Aerotech. Your name is on the primary clearance protocols. The current management seems unable to access the system to verify data integrity. We are initiating a containment protocol. I'm aware of the company, General. I used to work there. As of yesterday afternoon, I was terminated. There was a silence on the line. A heavy, pregnant silence. Terminated? The General asked. His voice dropped an octave. You were the holder of the TS/PSY keys. You were terminated without a handover? I was told I was too expensive, General, and that a new dynamic team would be handling things. I could hear the General inhaling. It sounded like a jet intake. I see, he said. The menace in his voice wasn't directed at me anymore. Ma'am, I am requesting your assistance. Not as an employee of Aerotech, but as a cleared citizen. Can you come to the site? I can be there in 20 minutes, I said. Good, I'll have a team meet you at the perimeter. Bring your ID. Yes, sir. I hung up. I checked my makeup in the mirror. I looked tired but fierce. I looked like someone who was about to walk into a fire and put it out with a snap of my fingers. I grabbed my keys. It was time to go to work. The drive to the office usually took 15 minutes. Today, it felt like a victory lap. I turned onto the industrial parkway. I saw the flashing lights. Not just 1 or 2 police cars. It was a carnival of authority. There were local PD cruisers blocking the main entrance. There was a fire truck, engine idling, crew standing around looking bored but ready. And then there were the black SUVs, Suburbans with tinted windows and government plates. They were parked right up on the curb, aggressive and imposing. I pulled my beat-up sedan up to the police blockade. Young officer stepped forward, hand up. Roads closed, ma'am. Incident at the tech building. I rolled down my window. I'm Margaret, last name. General Vance asked me to come. The officer blinked. He touched his earpiece. Dispatch, I have a female here claiming. He stopped. He listened. His eyes went wide. He looked at me differently. Yes, sir, understood. He stepped back and waved me through. Go ahead, ma'am, park right in front. I drove past the gawking employees who had been evacuated to the parking lot. I saw Susan from HR clutching her purse. I saw the marketing team huddled together, vaping nervously. They all watched me drive by. They knew I was fired yesterday. They looked confused. Why is she back? Why are the cops letting her in? I parked my car next to one of the black SUVs. It looked like a toy next to a tank. I stepped out. The air smelled of exhaust and stress. 2 men in suits approached me. They didn't look like Greg's corporate lawyers. They looked like they ate corporate lawyers for breakfast. They had earpieces and no sense of humor. Miss last name? One asked. That's me, follow us. The General is inside. They escorted me to the front doors. The glass doors were taped off with yellow tape that said Federal Crime Scene Do Not Enter. One of the agents lifted the tape for me. I ducked under it. The lobby was chaos, or rather, controlled chaos. Uniformed officers were taking photos. Technicians in blue windbreakers with DOJ forensics on the back were unpacking gear cases. And there in the center of the room was Greg. He looked melted. His expensive suit was rumpled. His tie was loosened. He was sweating so much his forehead was shining under the emergency lights. He was shouting at a man in a military uniform, a man with 2 stars on his shoulder. I'm telling you, it's a misunderstanding. Greg was pleading, his hands waving frantically. It's a glitch. We hired a top-tier vendor. The General Vance stood like a statue. He was tall, gray-haired, and radiated an aura of absolute intolerance for bullshit. He wasn't even looking at Greg. He was looking at the ceiling as if praying for patience. My escort stopped. General 1 said, she's here. General Vance lowered his gaze. He turned slowly. He saw me. Greg spun around. His eyes locked onto me. For a second, I saw hope. Then I saw fear. Margaret, Greg shouted. He started to lunge toward me, but a federal agent stepped in his path, blocking him with a stiff arm. Margaret, tell them it's just a server error. Fix it. I didn't look at Greg. I looked at the General. I walked over to him, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence of the lobby. "General Vance," I said, extending a hand. "Margaret, systems compliance." He took my hand, his grip was firm, Miss Last Name. "I've heard a lot about your absence. I'm afraid my employment was terminated yesterday due to budget cuts," I said, loud enough for the agents nearby to hear. "I was told I was too expensive." The general looked at Greg. The look could have peeled paint off a battleship. "Too expensive," the general repeated. He looked around the lobby at the dozens of agents, the police, the forensic teams. "Well, this operation is currently costing the U.S. taxpayer about $50,000 an hour, so I'd say that was a miscalculation." Greg made a whimpering noise. "What is the status of the data, General?" I asked, slipping back into professional mode. "We don't know," Vance said. "The system is in total lockdown. We can't get past the encryption you set up. And since your successor here," he jerked a thumb at Greg, "doesn't know the difference between a root key and a root vegetable, we are stuck." "The thermal alarms?" "The fire department wanted to flood the room. I stopped them, barely. We have about 20 minutes before the hardware cooks itself." I nodded. "I can stop it. But I need my credentials restored, and I need a terminal." "You have whatever you need," Vance said. "Actually," I said, turning to look at Greg, "I don't. My RSA token is on the conference table upstairs. My user account was deleted." Vance turned to Greg. "Where's the token?" Greg stammered. I think maybe the cleaners find it," Vance barked. "Now." Two agents grabbed Greg by the arms. "Show us." They dragged him toward the elevators. I looked at the general. "I can bypass the token if I have root access, but I need to be reinstated in the system." "Consider it done," Vance said. "You're working for me now." We took the stairs to the server room level. The general didn't seem the type to wait for elevators. The hallway outside the server room was sweltering. The heat was radiating through the heavy security doors. It felt like standing next to a blast furnace. The silence from inside was terrifying, no hum of fans, just the ticking of cooling metal expanding and contracting. "Forensics team, clear the area," Vance shouted. The technicians stepped back. "It's all yours," Vance said. I approached the crash cart. Portable terminal plugged directly into the emergency port on the wall. This was the only way in during a hard lockdown. I cracked my knuckles. It was a cliché, but I needed the moment. The screen was black with a blinking red cursor. "System halted. Enter admin key." I started typing. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I wasn't just typing a password, I was writing a script to override the thermal shutdown sequence manually. "Status?" Vance asked, hovering over my shoulder. "The core is intact," I said, reading the raw hex code scrolling down the screen. The automated defense worked. It walled off the data. "But the heat is critical. 92 degrees. If we don't get the fans on in 2 minutes, the drives will warp." "Do it." "I'm locked out of the cooling controls because the system thinks I'm a hostile entity," I explained without stopping. "I have to trick it into thinking I'm the ghost of Christmas past." Executed a command, sudo reboot systems controller force. "Access denied. Please present token." "Damn it," I muttered. "Greg, where's that token?" As if on cue, the elevator doors down the hall dinged. Greg came running out, flanked by the agents. He was holding the small plastic dongle like it was the Holy Grail. "I found it," he gasped. "It was in the trash. The cleaners threw it out." He ran up and tried to hand it to me. "Plug it in," I said, not looking at him. He fumbled with the USB port. His hands were shaking so bad he couldn't get it in. "Give it to me," the general snapped. He snatched the token from Greg and jammed it into the port. The screen flashed green. "Token accepted." "Welcome, Margaret." I hit enter. "Override initiated. Restarting environmental controls." From behind the heavy doors there was a groan, a mechanical shudder. And then the sweet, sweet sound of turbine fans spinning up. It sounded like a jet taking off. The whoosh of air moving through the ducts was deafening. Temps dropping, I reported. 91, 89, 85, the general let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since dawn. "Good work," he said. "I'm not done," I said. "We still have the breach to deal with." I pulled up the logs. "Let's see who our friends are." I displayed the connection log on the monitor. It showed the IP addresses of the dynamic team. "Bangalore," I said, using a standard commercial ISB. No VPN, no encryption. They were practically broadcasting the login credentials in plain text. I pointed to a specific line of code, and look at this. They tried to install a remote administration tool called TeamViewer. Free version. The general stared at the screen. "TeamViewer on a classified network?" "Yes, sir. That's what triggered the level red. It's a known vector for malware." Vance turned to Greg slowly. Greg was leaning against the wall, looking like he was about to vomit. "You authorized this?" Vance asked. His voice was dangerously quiet. They said they were industry standard," Greg whispered. "You handed access to a DoD database to uncleared civilians using free software," Vance said. "Do you have any idea the level of negligence that represents? That's not just firing grounds, son. That's prison grounds." Greg slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. I was just trying to save money," he sobbed. "You saved about 4% on payroll," I said, turning to face him. "And you cost the company its federal license." Vance nodded. "He's right. I'm suspending the contract immediately. This facility is now under military jurisdiction until a full audit is complete." He looked at me. "And since you are the only one who knows how to operate it, you are now the provisional site commander." I raised an eyebrow. Site commander. That sounds expensive. Vance actually cracked a smile. A small, grim smile. We pay market rates, Margaret, plus a hazard bonus. I accept, I said, then I looked at the screen again. The new team was still trying to ping the server. Connection attempt 452, General, I said. Would you like to do the honors? What honors disconnecting them? I typed a command, release the hounds. Okay, the command was actually execute, trace, and block, but in my head, it was cooler. I'm sending a traceback signal to their ISP, flagging the IP as participating in a cyber attack against the US government, I explained. Their internet is about to go out, and local law enforcement in their country will be getting an automated notification. I hit enter. On the screen, the connection attempt stopped instantly. Target neutralized. Nice, Vance said. We moved back to the conference room, the same glass-walled fishbowl where I was fired less than 24 hours ago. The dynamic had shifted. I was sitting at the head of the table. General Vance was to my right. Greg was sitting in the corner, holding a bottle of water an agent had given him, looking like a child in timeout. Two other executives, the CEO and the VP of HR, had arrived. They looked terrified. They had been pulled out of bed and rushed here. Let me be clear, General Vance began, addressing the CEO. Your company is currently in breach of Contract 88 Delta. Section 4, Paragraph 2, all personnel with root access must hold active top-secret clearance. The CEO, a man named Sterling who usually looked like he was posing for a magazine cover, nodded frantically. Yes, General, we understand. It was an oversight. It was not an oversight. Vance slammed his hand on the table. It was a choice. You fired Miss Last Name. He pointed at me. Miss Last Name is the Named Information Systems Security Officer, ISO, on the contract. When you fired her, you didn't just fire an employee. You removed the legal authority for this building to operate. The VP of HR spoke up, her voice trembling. We intended to transfer the duties to the new CFO temporarily. Vance laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. To him, does he have clearance? Has he been vetted by the FBI? Does he know how to configure a firewall? Greg stared at his shoes. You replaced a certified expert with a spreadsheet and a prayer, Vance said. And the result is that I have agents scrubbing your servers for foreign malware. I leaned forward. I caught Sterling's eye. Sterling, I said, did you know Greg replaced my team with an offshore vendor? Sterling looked at Greg. He told me it was a cloud-based solution. He said it was agile. It was agile, all right, I said. It was so agile it bypassed every security protocol we have. Margaret, Sterling said, his voice pleading. Can you fix it? Can you clean this up? We'll reinstate you, full back pay. A raise. I looked at my fingernails. They were chipped. I'm already reinstated, I said. By the General, I'm working for the DoD now as an independent consultant. My rate is 3 times my old salary, and I bill hourly. Sterling swallowed hard. Okay, whatever it takes. And I added, looking at Greg, I need a new office. I don't like the vibe in the basement anymore. You can have any office you want, Sterling said. I want his, I pointed at Greg. Greg looked up, shocked. My office? Yeah, I said. It has great light, and I like the chair. General Vance stood up. This meeting is adjourned. Sterling, get your lawyers. You're going to need them. Greg, the agents outside would like a word with you about the missing logs from last night. Attempting to hide evidence during a federal investigation is another felony to add to the list. Greg stood up shakily. He looked at me one last time. I just wanted to save the company money, he whispered. You get what you pay for, Greg, I said. And sometimes you pay for what you get. 2 agents stepped into the room. Sir, come with us. They led him out. I watched him go through the glass walls. He looked smaller than he did yesterday. Sterling looked at me. Margaret, I'm sorry. I didn't know. That's the problem, Sterling, I said. You didn't know and you didn't ask. You just saw a smaller number on a spreadsheet and signed the paper. I stood up. I have work to do. The servers are cooling down, but I have to rebuild the entire access control list from scratch. It's going to take all weekend. Of course, Sterling said. Anything you need. Coffee, I said, and not the break room sludge. Send someone to get the good stuff. By noon, the chaos had subsided into a dull roar. The police were gone. The fire trucks were gone. Only the black subs remained. I sat in the corner office on the 12th floor. The view was spectacular. You could see the whole city. I spun around in the ergonomic chair. It really was comfortable. General Vance knocked on the open door frame. Settling in, he asked. It'll do, I said. He walked in and handed me a folder. These are the preliminary authorization papers. You are officially the site lead for the recovery phase. Duration, indefinite. Thanks, General. He looked out the window. You knew, didn't you? Knew what? That they would fail. That the system would lock down. That I would get called. I took a sip of the latte that Sterling's assistant had run out to get me. I knew the system worked, General. I built it to work. I built it to detect incompetence and shut it down. I didn't know when they would trip the wire, but I knew they would walk right into it. Vance nodded, a look of respect. You weaponized compliance, Margaret. That's a new one. I didn't weaponize it, I said. I just took the safety labels off. He chuckled. Well, keep them off. I like knowing someone is actually watching the store. He turned to leave. I'll be in touch. Don't let them hire any more dynamic teams. Don't worry, I said. I'm doing the hiring from now on. He left. I turned back to the desk. Greg's nameplate was still there. I picked it up. It was heavy, expensive crystal. I dropped it into the trash can. Clunk. I opened my laptop. I had full admin access again. The servers were stable. The temperature was back to a cool 68 degrees. The dynamic team in Bangalore had been blacklisted by every major ISP in the region thanks to the general's phone calls. A notification popped up on the company chat. It was from Susan in HR. Susan, hi Margaret, so glad you're back. Just wanted to know, do you want us to post a requisition for a new CFO? I stared at the message. I typed back, no need. I'm handling the budget for IT from now on. We're going to be investing in quality assurance. I leaned back. I lit a cigarette. I know you're not supposed to smoke in the office, especially not in a LEED-certified building. But who was going to stop me? Guy who fired me was currently answering questions in a windowless room at the FBI field office. The CEO was terrified of me, and the US military had just given me the keys to the castle. I took a drag and blew the smoke toward the air vent. It wasn't just a job anymore, it was a fiefdom. I looked at the server logs one last time. System status, operational current admin, Margaret fiscal agility, I whispered, smiling. I closed the laptop. All right, that's the saga. If you learned anything, it's this. Never fire the person who knows where the bodies are buried, or in this case, where the encryption keys are hidden. And seriously, if you liked watching corporate greed get smacked in the face by federal regulations, hit that upvote. I've got plenty more stories from the trenches, but for now, I've got a department to run. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.